Hey friend, it's dark half the time on this planet, so unless you got shiny eyes like Riddick, you're gonna have a hard time operating operationally unless you get night vision from tnvc.com.
Howdy folks, I'm Jeff Gonzalez, former Navy SEAL, founder of Trident Concepts and host of the Bulletproof Workshop powered by AR15.com, where we discuss knowledge, skills, and ability to help bulletproof your everyday performance in whatever your field or passion. Welcome to podcast number 38 special.
Amen.
My next guest is a former Navy SEAL who took his combat experience and affinity for the military working dogs to new heights. He's a 3-time book author and 2 of them reaching the New York Times bestseller list. He started a professional dog training company that places highly trained and effective canines to a variety of clientele, both private and government level. Something I have firsthand experience is the online training company that takes his vast years of experience and shares it with thousands of families across the world, which was awesome, by the way, when we had our puppy. But for all his success, I believe the biggest achievement is the charity that provides the highest level of retirement care for the amazing animals that have served our country. One of the things that I am really proud of. He's a former Frogman, a Call of Duty collaborator, an extreme entrepreneur, canine command and control relationship creator, and my favorite, Epstein didn't kill himself, meme master. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you.
Mike Ritland.
I'm never going to live that down.
No, you're not,
yeah,
man.
That's every time.
But dude, that was like so baller. Yeah. I mean, prime time.
Yeah, I mean, it was totally off the cuff, honestly. Like it wasn't a planned thing, which I told the story a number of times.
I'm sure.
Yeah, it just kind of came up, honestly. Like it wasn't a planned thing, but
I think that's what made it so good.
Yeah,
is that it was just so spontaneous, and I think that kind of like epitomized that time period for us as well. You know, how everybody was trying to push that under the rug and make it go away, and here you are, prime time. And I love Jesse's response too. He was kind of really calm about it, but you could tell that he was like.
He's like, what the fuck? I think it took him by surprise more than
100%. 100%. That was a great one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's not necessarily your claim to fame. That definitely puts you in a high ranking position for I think a lot of folks on the internet. They probably became your instant fans because of that.
Yeah, maybe.
So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Normally we like to start with, kind of like background and where you came from and things like that. But I think really what I like to do more is what led you to where you are right now?
So really two main things, I think, which is one, just serving in the SEAL teams, which was kind of the catalyst to being in Iraq and seeing kind of firsthand the impact that working dogs had. I think ironically, like I grew up with bird dogs and there was a kind of a nasty German Shepherd in our neighborhood that it was just mean. Like he was always bullying other dogs and it was just pretty aggressive. I didn't like him. Like I hated him. Honestly. Like, cause it was almost like the scene out of The Sandlot, like, I mean, it was like that.
Yes,
it was like,
Zeus.
Shit, is he out? Is he in the yard? So it was like, I would kind of plan my dive, so to speak, of where I was going to walk our dog in the afternoon after school based on whether or not this dog was out.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, but fast forward 20 years and then I guess 10 years. Just seeing the impact that they had, and their ability both operationally to augment our troops overseas, and whether it's detecting explosives or counter ambush operations, finding people that are hidden in hidden floors or secret compartments, furniture wise, or even squirter control out the back or what have you. Just kind of really made me enamored with their capability. And then as I kind of got further into fancying the breed and that working prospect, it really opened my eyes to kind of how paralleled a good dog is for special operations as well as special operators. Like the things that you look for, a lot of the kind of testing protocol and et cetera are very similar, and a lot of the same traits that kind of lend themselves to success in the SEAL teams are the same things that you look for in a good working dog.
Well, that's not surprising in some respects, because I always joke how, NASA and Walmart hire from the same gene pool. We got the same, we look the same on the outside, but there's a lot of different character traits that we strive to, really bring to the surface or specifically within the special operations community, we target for, because we know there's past performance that shows folks with these character traits have proven that they will do better in the circumstances that we typically find ourselves in, which is high stress, very volatile, very unknown, very fast moving. So I'm not surprised that, within the canine families that there's similar kind of, there's the goofballs and then there's the straight shooters that are just 100%. They're all in, so.
Yeah. And, what's interesting about that is that sometimes you see a strange mix of both, similarly to the way you do in the SEAL teams. Some of the most violent and capable men I've ever met are some of the funniest, like fucking total clowns, outside of work are just total fucking goofballs, and some dogs are that way. Not all of them. Some of them are soulless. They want to do nothing but hurt people, and like that, like they're either awake and trying to kill everybody or they're asleep.
I love that.
But some of them, are very puppy-like and they're playful and they're just goofy and funny. And it's such a strange dichotomy in a working dog because, their inability to use logic and reason, to me would kind of lend itself to the more serious.
Yeah.
Which again, a lot of them, or even I would say most of them are more that way, but there's enough of them that are not that way, that are great with kids, that are fine with other animals, but when they're on and they're in work mode and they're ready to get their paws dirty, man, they're as good as anything, but
I love that, and it's so funny because, canines and dogs have been in the combat environment for eons, forever. Exactly.
Since it started.
Exactly. And to see them evolve to be where they are, and it started, really, really early on. I started to appreciate the value that they brought because I had an opportunity to talk with some of the guys that ran dogs back in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And I can remember thinking, wow, why? Because after we left Vietnam, there was no canine program within special operations. It went away. Yeah. Literally, we left everything there in country. We had all of the perimeter force protection animals, but we didn't have anybody to integrate. We didn't have anybody that was doing anything to integrate them back into special operations. And I was like dumbfounded by that.
Yeah. To me, it's a simple matter of, unfortunately, like with most things, it's a line item. It is.
It's so true.
It's, you've got people that have no relation, no real even understanding of how good they are and how capable they are, that are making decisions. And to be fair, if you're looking at, okay, we have this much money, here's our pot of money. We need Humvees, we need body armor, we need weapon systems, we need new night vision. Dogs are an expensive attachment to a force multiplier or as a force multiplier. And so, to justify that, for a 20-year period of peacetime, essentially, is a difficult thing to do. And
I hadn't thought of it that way.
Unlike a weapon system, like a sniper rifle setup or, new demolition or, anything that we kind of already use, that it's a matter of, okay, I already understand how guns work. So this new HK sniper platform, bringing that in, it's not a huge, heavy lift to learn how to use that. Dogs are, a completely different animal, no pun intended. And it takes, I would say, the same level of experience and mastering and expertise to maintain that skill set that it does a sniper program
100%.
Or a breacher program or a diving program or an air program, So to maintain that, it's expensive, and you're pulling guys because it takes, really, a few dozen dudes to spend years getting good at it and then maintaining it, So, it's its own entity that.
I hadn't thought of it that way, and it makes sense. And it reminds me of some of the changes that the community went through where, when we got on the ground and it became, we kind of moved away from the AOs. We kind of moved more into like 100% direct action. We lost some of our legacy mission profiles, like diving, shipboarding, things that had to do with that. And it was always portrayed as this is temporary.
Yeah.
But the problem that I had with that is like, well, who's going to be the custodian of this skill set that, while we're in this?
Nobody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened. And some of the, there's retired frogs that still have that stuff that is like, they can recall it in an instant.
Yeah.
But like, what does that have? How does that impact us from a force readiness position. Like that's what we do. It's it's the first initial in our name, C, and we have very little to do with it anymore. And I understand that the war made things change, but my bitch was not having the hindsight to come up with a solution to kind of keep all that, somewheres.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a foresight issue or a Band-Aid mentality. In that it's basically saying, okay, this is what we need to address right this second. So we're not looking at the long game. We're looking at right now. And the problem is I think to your point is that you've got that mentality is okay for months or even a couple of years. 20 years.
Hell no.
You lose everything.
Absolutely,
and
man.
It reminds me of, when we were going through land warfare in the late 90s, we had a Vietnam frog, Mike Martin. He was our training cell land warfare guy at SEAL Team 3. And like he scared the shit out of us. I mean, we're out at Nyland and he's doing like quarter M112 block. Booby trap charges like from here to the fucking door. Blowing up, trip wires. And I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff, shit. Man. Yeah. I mean, the stuff that he was doing then, I mean, zero chance that would happen today.
Oh, that's so sad because it was,
my point is that like his level of expertise in that jungle type of mentality and environment was irreplaceable.
Yeah.
And that didn't get passed on to anybody, and so not only do you lose it, but it's like you can't reinvent something that you never went through. It's like you can't take Vietnam experience and just replicate it when you weren't there and it wasn't passed down.
So true.
And same with the cold weather guys, Team 5 or Team 8 or Team 2 rather.
It's so true. I mean, and the other thing too and I had a similar experience too on the East Coast. We had
Team 4 jungle.
Yeah, we had Master Chief Brian Keith and Master Chief J.J. Josms, who were both, like Vietnam legends of sorts. And I can remember going on point man courses that J.J. would put together. And like, I'm sure that most of my head injuries came from walking point man courses that he set up because that shit was going off right there at and I can remember too, as a new guy point man, my platoon was like, don't fuck up.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Great advice. It's like, don't quit.
Yeah, exactly. And I can remember the first time I tripped one, I literally like time stood still. I felt like I could literally see the plume of the explosion creating into this massive mushroom cloud and watched it all in like super slow-mo when it happened. Cause I was like, oh, fuck, when that thing went off. So, but you're right. That's knowledge that we lose, and it's hard to regain that. You have to start from scratch and reinvent the wheel in many respects. Yeah. So,
well, and again, I think it's worse than that because those aren't lessons that you can just come up with. Like, those are ones that were learned in combat. Like, you can't recreate that, And I think we really, kicked ourselves in the nuts or cut ourselves off at the knees with that mentality of saying, let's. Jack of all trades, and now there's master of none. With because before it was like you had the desert guys, Team 3, the CENTCOM desert guys. You had, at least on the West Coast, Team 1 was all jungle and such. Team 5 was cold weather and mountain stuff, and it's like now it doesn't matter what team you're at, it's all the same whore, different dress, like cookie cutter bullshit. That
and I can recall. Like, and I get it. I mean, I understand. We fought a war for 20 years, and we had to evolve in many cases. But it does seem, looking back, like hindsight, like now what?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I always kind of kept in the back of my head is, well, the rest of the world is not fucking desert.
Yeah.
We've got to maintain capability of the rest of the world. Like we've got Asia, we've got Northern Europe. We've got all these Central and South American regions, and what's going to what happens if the fucking balloon goes up in those areas?
I think there'd be some very painful, hard lessons learned.
Hell to the yeah.
Did I not get the memo on the uniform of the day? By the way, are we matching?
We apparently are. At least from the camera's perspective, I think we are. So thank God. Because it would have been terrible if we didn't look alike.
I know. Sacrilege.
So much. So it's funny because when I got to get to know that one canine handler from Vietnam, he would tell me all sorts of shit that they would do, and I was just blown away by that. And when I left the Navy and I started working overseas and I found myself back in Afghanistan, we had a shitty situation in our little FOB, if you will. And it was just a matter of time before things really got bad. And I made the suggestion, that hey, why don't we just go to someplace and buy a look-alike working dog? It doesn't have to actually work. It just has to look like one. And nobody thought that was a good idea. It was like, oh, that's stupid, blah, 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 blah. And, about 6 months later, that's exactly what happened. Yeah. They went to Frankfurt, went to a pet store, bought a German Shepherd looking dog, brought it back, put a vest on it, walked it around the compound on regular intervals, brought it up to vehicles. And the outcome was that it worked.
Yeah.
Even though that dog didn't know what it was doing.
Yeah.
Everybody that was watching us realized, oh, well, shit. That they look like they know what they're doing, because we actually did have a canine handler that came in that just did the things that made it look like the dog knew what it was doing.
Yeah.
It worked perfectly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was. I mean, it's always one of those things where, even just the lure of what a canine can do. Cause I can remember when we would bring these guys in and we would bring that dog over, like the fight, literally just, they were all ready to scrap and kind of like, come on, and we'd bring the dog over and they would just like see the wind just die from their sails. They're like, please don't let that dog loose.
You see that time and time again here in the United States from a law enforcement standpoint. It's like the guy will be, unarmed but non-compliant,
For sure.
Bowing up against 6 armed officers that are trying to tase him and fucking pepper spray him. And, and then you bring out this little 60-pound female Malinois and the dude lays right down, hands behind his back. Like, I'm not fucking with that dog. It's crazy.
I know. So every now and then you talk about like I feel like my puppy Brizo is like, she's like part clown, part soul stealer. And I'll see it come out in her, not necessarily in her, but just her posture, just the way that she'll like when something gets threatening or something is like, she's unsure of it. She's all happy-go-lucky. She prances around like a deer. And then all of a sudden, when she's like in that zone, she just gets low and you just see, oh man, I want to see her go one time. I just want to see her go and do something. I've seen her, before we kind of let that part of her training die down, the bite work, just watching her do that stuff was just so awesome.
Yeah.
I wish we had continued, but as you know, that's just
it's a perishable skill.
Perishable and time consuming.
Yeah. What I will say, the thing that is nice about that though is if just like with human beings, if the genetics are there, and you maximize that window that's crucial, which is as they're growing up and get into adulthood, no different than like if you took, fucking Mike Tyson, Conor McGregor, any household name from a combative standpoint, that grew up, has the genetics, has the drive, has the coaching, has the training, started early, got to a point where they're at the top of their game. Take Connor, right? Got fucking bad injury, whatever. He's put on some weight in a good way, but you take him, like if he never trained another day in his life, but just stayed in good shape.
Yeah.
Like that dude's still going to fucking be a handful for almost everybody. Right.
100%.
So it's the same thing with the dogs, but it's crucial that you have the genetics and that you have that training during that window. Like if you don't do anything with them the first 2 years of their life and then try it, it's no different than me trying to pick up a golf club at 30, having never golfed, type of thing. Like it's a lot harder for them to maximize those genetics. But to your point of seeing that behavior change, that's the single most critical component to being a good handler is the observation of the dog. And that's where a lot of people, I think, not miss the mark, but just maybe misunderstand being able to really kind of take advantage of what that dog brings to the table is being very, very keen to what they're telling you through their body, because they, you and I mean, think about the amount of information that we've passed since I've been sitting down.
Yeah.
How much has body language played a role? Zero or very little.
Yeah.
Now you put yourself in a dog's shoes where there is no verbal communication or very, very little.
Right.
Yes, they whine and bark and growl and things, but 99.8% of their communication interspecies is body language, and so they're doing so many things with their body that if you pay attention, and a good handler, if you're watching your dog through training, like that's the biggest part of of training
Yeah.
is training the handler to be able to observe the dog and understand what the dog is telling you, whether it's change in behavior from just in what they do, whether they come into contact with explosive odor, human odor, game odor,
Yeah.
fucking, trailing scenting. Like those are 4 very disparate changes in behavior that are completely different from one another.
Interesting.
The way a dog is going to respond when he comes into foreign human odor is the same way you or I would, but bowing up.
Yeah.
The ears are forward, the chest is up, and the shoulders are back, and the intense gaze.
Yeah.
Comes into explosive odor, you're going to see it, a feathering of the tail, an intense, snaking back and forth, head snaps back and forth coming into odor. Like, so just those 2 things, like to an experienced handler, it's night and day. Like the dog is doing 2 totally different things. To an unexperienced person or a layman that has no idea what they're looking at, it's just like, oh, he smells something, but it's 2 totally different things.
Wicked. That is wicked.
Yeah.
Wicked
and
cool.
so being a good handler, a lot of it is being able to read your dog, and that just comes through repetition. But what's neat about it is that, human beings, I think, are inherently kind of designed or almost set up, or at least able to read their dog that way fairly naturally. I mean, no different than take any pet dog owner that has a dog that has, no genetics that lend itself to any type of working traits. Like, you still know, oh, my dog's about to take a shit, right? It's like, it's the same thing.
You're right.
It's like, no, I see the way
I know what he's doing.
walking. I see he's going to piss on that, whatever. It's like, it's the same thing.
I love it.
It's just, repetition and observing things that take place in a pattern, and that's it, but that's really the one of the biggest things that I think people screw up with their dogs personally. And even handlers, not, thinking of it more as a tool, and the dog needs to tell me, and not really, really paying super close attention. But.
So I know that you've worked at creating, these amazingly talented and gifted animals that, either go to the government or go to, people that need them for whatever their safety requirements are.
Need is maybe a stretch.
I know, but still.
Well, some of
them,
some of them are in pretty legitimate threatening situations.
Oh yeah.
I guess, but.
And, well, that's a whole other subject, but when you, you've amassed so much training, and when you took that training and you condensed it or compartmentalized it into the online program, like, I kind of got a feel of how your brain operates, looking at the 1,000-foot view, seeing how it works. And, it was really interesting to see how it was laid out. Like, I thought it was brilliantly laid out. And I'm somewhat jaded because, my better half is a dog trainer as well. So, she can kind of cue me in on some of the things. She's like, oh, I really like, let me. I'd ask her, why do you like it? And she's like, well, because it doesn't. And I'm like, oh, very cool. But I have to imagine also that part of the reason why you designed the curriculum was frustration of having to deal with pet owners and the most common mistakes that are made over and over and over. What are like the top 3 that just drive you crazy?
So I'll take one step back and say that it's really not out of frustration, and nothing that people do drive me crazy, for the same reason that, like, if my plumber was frustrated with me not knowing what the fuck's going on with my plumbing, like, I would think he's an asshole.
Yeah.
If you don't know, you don't know, and I think that is an important distinction to make, because at the end of the day, like, they're still customers, and, like, I'm not going to talk shit about them for, like, trying to better themselves and not knowing what they're doing and trying to learn. So
love it.
That's the first thing. But to your question as to kind of the evolution of the training, it actually started with the book Team Dog, which, it's basically video representations of that. And that as kind of my name or reputation grew in the industry, and I would go do events, speaking engagements or training conferences or working with departments or whatever, it was just basically having the same conversation over and over.
Yeah.
And so, the book was a good kind of foundation, but just like reading a book to learn how to shoot, like video is way more helpful. In person is obviously the best, but so it's basically that it's kind of a necessity of, okay, here's where most people make the most common mistakes the most often. And so here's video representations of that. To your question, the top 3 things that I think where people make mistakes, first and foremost, is not thinking like their dog. Ooh. Right? Unquestionably is that it's I think natural and inherent for human beings to look at things from a human perspective. It makes sense.
Yeah,
we're humans.
Yeah.
But the biggest key component, if you think about the way that a dog's mind works, right, is that you and I have an internal monologue, right? Like you dream in a language, you think in a language. So, you're navigating your day, and if you're trying to problem solve, you're thinking about something, there's a language in your head thinking through that.
Yeah.
Try to imagine not having that.
Yeah.
Right. It's hard to even wrap your mind around going through your day of not having an internal monologue. Right?
Wow.
So dogs don't think in a language,
Huh.
which is unquestionably that the biggest fail for people is that they're looking at it through logic and reasoning and thinking through something.
Yeah.
Whereas your dog's mind is way more like a calculator, like an algebra calculator. It's A plus B equals C for everything. So everything is a simple association. It's, when I do this, this happens.
Yeah.
I'd say probably the most classic example is that most people, if they walk their dog frequently, can attest to is grabbing the leash and your dog loses their mind, right? Spin around. Like some dogs to the point where it's actually a problem. Like it becomes a problem behavior.
Yeah.
And like, I can't even get the fucking leash on the dog. He's so excited to go for a walk.
Yeah.
And so I've used this analogy a million times, but I'll use it again because I think it's the most prominent one is that, A is I grab the leash, right? So in the dog's mind, that's A. B is I connect it to the dog's collar equals C, we're going for a walk.
Yeah.
So just like in algebra is if A plus B equals C enough times, that formula is B equals MC squared. It's concrete. And so in the dog's mind, it's a fact.
Yeah.
Right? A plus B equals C.
Yeah.
So now, once that takes place, there's enough of those repetitions where that formula is accurate. Now, the very presence of A equals the anticipation of C.
Yeah.
Right. So B doesn't even need to be there. It's A equals C now. So they're shortcutting everything.
Yeah.
But if so, I'll kind of work in reverse after in a second here. But so when you want to break that behavior and you get that dog to where they're spinning up and they're being such a pain in the ass that it's hard to even connect the leash to them, is that now okay, A plus B equals C. Now I need to make A plus B not equal C enough times to where they stop anticipating it.
Oh, wow.
Right. So now I grab the leash, right? I connect it to them. I take it back off. I hang it up and I sit down, or I grab the leash. I wrap it around my waist. I don't even connect it to his neck. Then I hang it up and put it down. Maybe I set it somewhere else. I break that pattern. And so now I grab the leash, wrap it around my waist. I sit down, I start eating a sandwich and the dog is looking around like, what the fuck just happened? Right? Like now his mind is blown. Like now A plus B doesn't equal C anymore.
Yeah.
Like my math is all fucked up. But that's the beauty of dog training is it really is that simple.
Yeah.
It's just we overcomplicate it by, they're jealous or they're thinking this or he wants that or like no, you like if C, and the best way to think of dog training really as that 30,000 foot view is that if C is something you want, you make A plus B equal it until
it does.
It's a pattern and it's an anticipated response. If C is an undesirable behavior, then you need to reverse engineer and figure out what you've done in that A plus B to make it equal C and break that pattern so that it now doesn't exist anymore. And 99% of things that you want can be built that way, and 99% of the things that you don't want can be broken that way. It's just a matter of figuring out what that is. That's the first thing, is the way that they think. The second thing, which certainly falls in line with that, is consistency. Just like with shooting, with working out, with building a business, with being a fucking good human being, a father, a brother, a son, whatever, partner is consistency. And just like, with working out, like if you work out twice a month, or even twice a week, but the rest of the time, like you're just fucking off and eating shitty and bad sleep and, tons of porn and Netflix, and, like you're not going to reach your goals.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with dogs. And where kind of the third thing, which they all kind of fall in line, is that understanding that in that consistency component is that you have to have a system, right? Just like with, getting in shape or building a business or whatever. And so I know where I'm at, which is A, and I know where I want to be, which is B or Z. How am I going to get from A to Z, right? Okay, so I need to develop a training plan. I need to know what my resources are. I need to know how much time I have. I need to know what's realistic. I need to evaluate the dogs. Is it even possible to get, if I want a super alert attack guard dog, like, and it's a Labradoodle that, can't bust a fucking grape and is scared of his own tail. like you're unrealistic. And just like
Yeah.
the kid that goes to all the Peyton Manning and Tom Brady training camps, but just doesn't have the right stuff.
Yeah.
Like no amount of training is going to put him in the NFL. It's the same kind of thing. Like you got to be realistic with yourself. But so, as an example, like a kind of a normal way to do it is that I set up like a boot camp. And this is whether it's a puppy, a rescue dog, an 8-year-old that, has an unknown background, whatever the case is that, look at it like you're setting up boot camp and that I'm going to crate train the dog. A lot of people think, it's, and here's where people, again, using the human logic, well, being in a crate is cruel. But it can be, if you thirst and starve the dog and never literally never take them out, or when you do, there's no mental stimulation, no physical stimulation. Yeah, it can be. It can be just as cruel overfeeding the dog and doing nothing with them and having a power vacuum in your house where the dog is chaotic and a nervous wreck because there's no structure and no routine and no, no boundaries and whatever. Like that dog is a neurotic fucking bag of nerves. So that's no less cruel. It's just different.
Yeah. I love that point of view, by the way.
Yeah. And same with tools, right? Prong collars, remote collars. Like, people automatically assume that a positive punishment device, a prong collar or a remote collar, what have you, is inherently cruel and no different than, your hands. Like your hands can save people's lives if you're a surgeon. It can be abusive if you're, beating somebody with them. It can create art and poetry. Like they are a tool. Yeah. The same way anything is, the same way a gun is, the same way anything is, how you use it, is 100%, what's going to dictate, how it is. And to further complicate things is that in the eye of the beholder, like the dog's interpretation is everything also. Like what's cruel to one dog is a fucking game to another one, So understanding all of those and not having kind of our societal like blanket outrage to the second something that they think is going on and just canceling everybody and that whole mess. Like you've got to take a step back and realize that, every dog is different. And by going through this process, that's how you evaluate, identify, and then ultimately, create that plan for success. But anyway, so put them in a crate, spend, anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks where the dog is in a crate all of the time, except for when I get them out and I do training sessions with them where I am feeding him through training. Yeah. And the reason for that is very simple, is that the white noise that exists in a dog's life is the distraction, the same way it is with people. Yeah. There's a reason we don't take 7th graders to Six Flags to teach them algebra, because they wouldn't fucking learn anything. But it's the same thing. Like if you're trying to teach your dog in your living room when kids are playing ball and the TV's on and the mailman's coming in, I mean, all of these different stimuli are taking place. The dog is so fucking distracted that you're really wasting your time. And I would say it's even counterproductive in that you're actually making bigger errors than doing nothing. Yeah. And so by removing all the white noise, you're basically cutting out that dog's ability to make all of these decisions on his own from an impulse control standpoint and from a self-reward standpoint. They don't have the ability to do that. If you give your kids iPads, your credit card to DoorDash, whatever they want. Yeah. No chores, no boundaries, whatever. Like, how much respect are they going to have for you? Are they going to ever listen to you? No, they're not. Yeah. So true. And so with a dog, it's the same thing. Like if I've got him loose in the house and he can go piss on whatever he wants, he can chew shit up, he can go to the window and bark, he can sniff this, he can run that way, he can dog door, go outside whenever he wants. That dog has no reason to listen to me at all. Yeah. Because I'm not bringing anything to the table. Oh, so remove that first, keep them in a crate. Let's say you're feeding him 3 cups of food a day. I'm going to put that in a Tupperware on top of his crate. I've got a treat pouch, a clicker, and a leash. Okay, so every couple hours, I'm going to grab him. I'm going to put a couple handfuls of food in the pouch, grab the clicker, clip the leash to him. We're going to walk out. And at first, it's just like in my backyard, it's all fenced in and there's nothing back there on purpose because I don't want there to be things that are interesting. So I'll cut him off leash. At first, when I first clip it to it, I'll mark, give him some food, mark, give him some food. We walk outside, sit at the door, mark, give him some food, walk outside, unclip the leash, and then I just ignore him. And when he looks at me, I'll mark it and give him some food. If he is sniffing something at the fence and decides to come over and kind of check in, give him some food. I don't say anything to him at this point.
Interesting.
And for the first, 2 weeks or so, 10 to 14 days, that's all I'm doing with the dog. Whether it's an 8-week-old puppy or a 9-year-old rescue and everything in between, is for that first 10 to 14 days.
Wow.
It's all I'm doing with the dog. And a lot of things are happening in that. One, you're removing the white noise. 2, you're putting your self hierarchy at the very top,
Yeah.
right? Like, and with that is that I'm feeding through training. So he's not eating any less, right? I'm not giving it, like, if he's getting 3 cups, he's getting 3 cups, but he's getting it a handful at a time, one eye contact repetition at a time, or one physical check-in at a time, or me putting the leash on him at a time, or him going back into his crate at a time. Is that, again, to that first thing that I said, where people screw up, that A plus B equals C, is that I'm making thousands of these algebraic truths in the dog's mind that exist, that these good things come in, and this primary reinforcer, i.e. my survival, relies on food.
Yep.
Is that over this 2-week period now, like, I'm fucking Zeus to this dog.
Yeah.
Right. And he doesn't give a shit about anything else. And so that's really kind of the start of it. And then you can start to shape behavior, and I'll use a dog bed to kind of teach the place command, which I think is a really important component to behavioral control inside the house.
Yeah.
As well as healing off leash. Like, those 2 things, people talk about socialization. And this is what I would say probably the third, thing that people mess up the most, is thinking that control is this like magic wizard thing that exists. Like, it's actually really simple. Or that socialization means that I let my dog go to the dog park and finger fuck all the other dogs and mess around and sniff asses like that. A socialized dog, from my perspective and kind of my definition, is a dog that will tolerate and can be around anything and ignore it.
Yes.
Right. Is that socializing doesn't mean that I'm roughhousing with the neighbor's dog or wrestling with the nephew. Like, those aren't things that are generally ever going to lead to good things.
Man.
On the transverse, like, if my dog is never roughhousing with other kids outside the family or other dogs or strangers or whatever, guess who's not getting in an accidental fight? Guess who's not accidentally getting bit? Nobody.
Yeah.
And no different than, like, I don't want my neighbors running their fingers through my kid's hair.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need anybody else to pet my dog, and they don't need to play with other dogs. If you're giving them mental stimulation and proper training, boundaries, and affection, not only do they not need that stuff, it's counterproductive because it undercuts you as an authoritative figure in the hierarchy in the house. So, using a dog bed, I'll do it outside first. Same kind of thing. Like, I don't say anything to them. I don't look at them. I just basically ignore them. And when they start to show interest in it, I mark and reward it. And over, usually even a couple of days, the dog understands, hey, going and running over to the dog bed and getting on top of it and laying down is a good thing. And so that dog bed routine, and then healing off leash and focused healing, where he's looking up at me, those 2 things.
Yeah.
The dog bed in the house covers everything. Now that the mailman comes, go to your bed.
Yeah.
Replace, whatever command you want to do. The neighbors are coming over, family's coming over, your nephew's coming over, the other dogs are coming. I mean, whatever it is that in every single instance, go to your bed.
I love that.
Go to your bed. Go to your bed. Like, now he's not jumping up on people.
Yeah.
Now he's not like, in every instance, like, I've created so many repetitions of go to your bed that when I know something's happening, the delivery guy comes, go to your bed.
Yeah.
It's one command and it covers everything.
Yeah.
Healing is the same thing. So now we're out in town and I work on healing in the backyard. And this is all in the videos, but shameless plug there for it. But it is. I mean, it's very simple stuff. It's not complicated. It just takes dedication and consistency. But similarly, so, inside the house is the dog bed, outside is focused healing. So now, at first it's in my classroom, it's in my backyard where there's not a lot of distractions and stimulation. And then we slowly start to introduce, take a Home Depot bucket and just set it out in the middle of the yard. Like, if there's nothing else in the yard, right? And now, I mean, same thing, like, think of a flat range. Like, you guys walk out, there's a Home Depot bucket. Who the fuck put the bucket out there? Like, everybody's going to know that
there's a bucket
out there. Same thing with the dog. He's like, the fuck is that? You've been out here the last 2 months and there's never been a bucket. Now there's a bucket.
I can only imagine.
So of course they're going to want to go sniff it and piss on it and check it out and whatever else. And so, you slowly start to introduce lower stimulation distractions first and get them to understand, ignore it, come back to me, go to your bed, whatever. Slowly ramp up. Like, then it's, a soccer ball laying there and they're like, fuck, I know that thing rolls and is fun to play with, then it's another dog.
Yeah.
Then it's, one of your kids or your spouse or whatever running around, doing something or, whatever. You can put food out. I mean, you can build that distraction and slowly test them.
Yeah.
And build them up to where now they'll ignore everything and go to their bed. And you do the same thing with healing. And then now go to Home Depot and heal the dog around kids with ice cream cones and everything else. And same thing with we're walking. Like my kind of general rule of thumb and advice for people when you're walking is if nothing is going on, I'll let the dog go ahead, pull a little bit.
Yeah.
Not drag, but I'll allow them to have some tension and leash, sniff, piss, enjoy the walk, be a dog.
Yeah.
That stimulation is important for their mental health and just overall, it's good for them to be allowed to do that. As soon as any other exterior stimuli comes into play, a walker, a jogger, a kid on a bike, a vehicle, anything, now all of a sudden we're walking and a car starts driving. Nope, get here, heel, focus on me. As soon as the car's gone, okay, and let them go back to being a dog. And so they still get to walk. You're still exercising the control and you're still kind of mitigating any of those problems. Another dog on a leash, like when people, I'd say if I had to pick, the two biggest behavioral problems are jumping up on people and reactivity towards other dogs on leashes. Like those are the two most common things.
Yeah.
What I just described, both of those things fix those, right?
I love it.
Somebody comes into my house, man, he just jumps on them nonstop. Teach him a place command. Like don't have people come into your house and sitting there correcting them and trying to work on it there. Like you're 10 steps ahead. Like you need to come all the way back and teach him to focus when you can actually reach his mind on going to the dog bed, no matter what's going on, and slowly stair step him up to where now, no matter what's going on, he'll go there and ignore it.
Yes.
And so, most people and even, trainers, it's like, oh, my dog is really aggressive when he's on leash towards other dogs. And so their fix is, okay, let's put him on a leash, get him with another dog, and we'll start, hammering him and correcting him. And it's like, no different than you or I. Like if you're pissed and about to get in a fight with somebody, like that's not the time to try to talk you off the ledge. Like if your wife's tapping you on the shoulder, like, hey, honey, no, don't start shit. You're not even going to hear it. Right. Or they're like what they're going to have to do to get your attention is going to either pick a fight with them or it's going to crush your spirit.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, that's your options at that point.
So
like,
true.
When that dog is ready to fight, whether it's a person, another dog, a vehicle, whatever they're stimulated by, is it trying to reach their mind? Those are the two things that are going to happen. You're going to pick a fight with them or you're going to have to crush their spirit and be so hard on them that they're like, holy fuck, I quit.
Yeah.
Like now I'm going to shut down. I'm going to lay down and tuck my tail and blow my anal glands and what have you. And neither of those are obviously productive.
Not at all.
So trying to address it there, like you got to take 5 steps back and build up to that point. But
if you like seeing stuff more than not seeing stuff, take a look at our sponsor, tnvc.com, your source for quality night vision gear to make you the bump in the night.
So Mike, one of the things that we were talking about earlier was, those two commands and how important they are and how simple but not easy they are.
Yeah.
And I was relaying an observation that I have of my Mal, who is, she either is all in or she's passed out, like you said. And so the place command has been so incredibly valuable. And I think one of the things that I've noticed about it is that I feel like they have this sense that they have to go, they have to be all in. And so when I give them the opportunity to not be all in with the use of the place command, she just goes right over there, lays down, and like 30 seconds later, she's out cold.
Yeah. Yeah. So on that, especially for dogs that are more energetic or driven or active, but even dogs that aren't, there's a failure, I think, for a lot of people to understand. And this is again where some of it is human perspective. Some of it, I think, is just a disconnect because in this case, it's not really any different with humans. I mean, take little kids. Is that, if you let little kids, especially like a 5-year-old, which, 5 to 7 is kind of a good parallel in terms of the way that their mind works with dogs, what have you. Is it like if there's no boundaries and no routine and no structure whatsoever, like they're a fucking nightmare, but they're also unhappy, like they're all over the place and they throw tantrums and they're just shitty little kids. Frankly.
Yes.
They're shitty little people. And, I mean, they are,
It's true.
but something as simple as like, okay, hey, dad needs you to see this pile. It's like fucking SEER school. See this pile of gravel? I need you to move this pile over to the other side of the yard. And they're like, okay.
I can do
them a
that.
shovel. Yeah. And they'll spend 2 hours doing it. Like, you did the fucking best job ever. Now I need you to move it back. And it's like, fuck yeah. Like, but it's purpose.
Yeah.
Right. Like when they have no purpose, like people are miserable, whether they're kids, adults, whatever. Well, dogs are no different that way. And that they have to have something to focus on.
Yes.
And to further complicate things, where dogs still have enough genetic hardwiring of, if there's a lack of leadership or a power vacuum, even if they don't want to fill it, they will, because they know somebody needs to.
Survival.
Right. So, now you've and that's the worst of both worlds, is you've got a dog, and this is a very common thing. Oh, my dog's super dominant. Your dog isn't dominant. Like, your dog doesn't want to be in charge, but you're not. And so they're defaulting to it.
100%.
And so you've got a dog that doesn't want to be in charge, that's doing it anyway, and no structure, no routine, no leadership, and they're just a neurotic mess.
Yeah.
And so by giving them a command to focus on, it allows their mind to just stay focused on that. It's no different than meditation.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, okay, now the dog doesn't have 4,000 options in the paradox of choice and can't pick. And so they're
all over the place.
It's no, you go to your bed and you lay there and you focus on it. And so now they can do that. And they're almost in like this meditation like trance.
Yeah.
And their mind is calm. Their demeanor is leveled off, and they have something to focus on. So it's just the far better way to do it. I mean, both for the dog's sake and for both the safety and mental sanity of the entire family.
Well, we talked a little bit about like the household chaos that can ensue when you add a pet to the household, and the quality of life of everybody suffers if you don't take just the basic steps, basic obedience, if anything, and that you see that. I was very fortunate, both dogs recent dogs have been, easy to work with. They understood the learning process well, and they could allow me to learn the learning process for them easier than a more challenging dog would have made it for me. That was something that I realized, is that they were like, if I just did the same thing over and over and over again, be super consistent, I was like, man, I'm a fucking rock star with these things. I can do this. Look at this, watch this. Then all of a sudden, but it wasn't because it was just that consistency that really made a difference.
No, it goes a long way. I mean, I think the best parallel with that is working out, or like mobility and stretching, like kind of a combination of those things.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people will skip the gym because, well, I don't have the full 2.5 hours that I wanted to dedicate to this Mr. Olympia training program that I'm on. And so I'm just going to fucking skip it.
Yeah.
It's like, no, if you got 10 minutes, go do it for 10 minutes and get what you can in.
Oh man.
Same with stretching. Like, well, I don't have the 45-minute yoga routine time, so I'm just going to not do anything.
Yeah.
Like, spend 3 minutes while you're watching, the fucking My Pillow guy on TV, like doing a V-sit and stretching, or sitting, cross-legged, I mean, whatever, like
something,
do something,
yes.
and so it's that same kind of mentality. One other thing that I wanted to bring up that's important, that where people make a mistake, is that when they're first bringing a dog into their house, and again, this is, puppy or what have you, and it dovetails on to the not putting yourself in the dog's shoes, is that, if you think about a scenario where, like, let's say you and your better half go to dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you're all dressed up. You walk into, really classy joint, like you're going to Applebee's, right?
Oh yeah. You nailed it.
You're going to Applebee's, wherever. And as soon as you walk in, the entire restaurant fucking stops what they're doing and does that.
Yeah.
Looks at you, fucking music stops. You can hear a pin drop. Everybody is paying attention to you. Like, are you comfortable in that? No. But what does every swinging dick do when they bring a dog into their house?
Stop what they're doing.
They swarm and smother the dog, and I want to be best friends, and I want to lay all over him. And like, put yourself in the dog's shoes. Like, that this dog is now part of your family, and that you're going to spend the dog's life, hopefully, with the dog. The dog has no idea what's going on. He's in a place he's never been, surrounded by people he's never met, and they're smothering him with attention. It's like, there's no faster way to make a dog fucking uncomfortable than doing that. But that's what almost everybody does.
100%.
So take a step back, give the dog a fucking break, and just let him settle in.
Yeah.
Right. And put him into the crate, feed him through training. Like
I love that.
I can't stress enough. Like just leave the fucking dog alone and stop trying to force and rush everything and just let them run wild and be a part of the house. Like it's 10 years down the road.
Right.
You know? It's like, you got to build up to that.
And that's the other thing too. And you know, you and I have had several conversations over the years, but you know, that instant gratification, have to have it now, want to have it now. And I think
Amazon Prime.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. And the thing that bothers me the most is that, you know, that doesn't happen when you're trying to, if you're trying to bring a pet into your family as a forever home, kind of like this is the forever home for this pet, then it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
No good relationship is.
Exactly.
Think about your best friends.
Yeah.
You know, like anybody who you're legitimately, like you could call them at 2 a.m. and be like, dude, I need you to fucking come over here right now. And I can't tell you why.
So one of the things I think that people really have a poor understanding of is that this relationship isn't going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
It's not going to be something that's an instant gratification that order it online and have it delivered the next day.
Yeah. And, you know, I think similarly, I mean, you see it kind of in society, even with human relationships in some cases, whether it's stuff like Tinder or even, you know, people that you meet online that you've, you know, never met in person. Like I see this next generation, like kids that are teenagers, like they meet people online and it's like, you don't even know who the fuck that is.
Right.
And the next day it's like, oh, it's my best friend, you know, whatever. It's like, no, it isn't. You never even fucking met him. Like you didn't even know that's who that is, you know? And so there's this kind of the same thing. I think, you know, people have like a collective memory of dogs.
Oh,
you know, it's like you grew up with a dog, right?
Yeah.
You spent 10 years, like even when you replace that dog, like you get the next dog and your expectation is what I had with that dog after putting 10 years into it. And I want that right now.
Right now.
It's like, we don't get that right now.
No.
You know? And so, yeah, it takes time. You have to build up to that. And you know, the kind of strange irony with it is that the less you try to force it, the easier it is. You know,
So
I mean,
true.
it's like,
But that's like with anything.
yeah, I mean,
so true.
Yeah, they just like stop trying so hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the 19-year-old at the bar or 21-year-old at the bar, I guess, trying to get laid. It's like, dude, stop fucking, or it's the cow scenario, you know, the old bull and the young bull.
Yes.
Let's run down there and fuck one of them. Let's walk down there and fuck them all.
I love that one.
You know, but it's just the mentality of like, dude, just take a step back and let it happen. You know, put the time in, but don't try to be best friends with the dog 10 minutes after you bring them into your house.
Yeah.
Let that relationship build and it will get there and be a lot stronger for it.
That's awesome. Did you know that I was a CEO of Tinder?
There's no way you were the CEO of Tinder.
So I went to an event. It was at SHOT Show, and I went to an event that they wanted badges. They wanted us to check in and wear badges. And I was like, fuck that. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to do that. And the guys that I were with, they were all, they were federal agents, and they were like, you know, they're not going to let us in if we don't get you know, if you don't get a badge. I'm like, I'm not getting a badge. Fuck that. And one of them was like, I'm just going to get you a badge. And I'm like, fine, but I'm not getting it. So he went and got me a badge, and under the company, the badge said CEO of Tinder. And I didn't bother to look at it. He just went, got it, you know, brought it over to me. He's like, here, put this on so we can go. You're being an asshole. I'm like, fuck you, I'm not being an asshole.
Yeah.
So I put it on, and I didn't even look. Yeah. And we're walking up, and we had to go through the first little checkpoint there. And the girl that was there looked at it. She saw the company, and she was like,
really?
Yeah. She didn't say anything, but she gave me that kind of like slant. And I was like, yeah, damn right. And we walked in, and a couple more people kind of did the same thing. And finally I took it and I turned it, and I was looking at it upside down, and I was reading it, and I was like, you motherfucker.
Yeah, you dirty bastard.
Yeah. So
awesome.
I was the CEO for Tinder for about, you know, I don't know, 30 seconds.
The people that would attract are the people you wouldn't want.
100%. That's 100%. Yeah. I actually had somebody say, hey, if I gave you my profile, could you like bump me up? Literally, I had somebody ask me that. And then I started playing it.
Yeah, give it to me.
I started playing the game. I started playing. Yeah. You know what? I can't, but I have people that can do that for you.
For you, I'm going to do that.
Yeah. All right. Something that, again, that I said was very near and dear to my heart was the charity, the foundation that you started, and the importance behind what that means. And I think, you know, people have, they're very short-term memory. They see these dogs doing amazing things overseas for the past 20 years, and now we're checking out. And so now what? What happens? And how? And these are extremely intelligent, highly driven, capable animals that all of a sudden don't have a job almost.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about Warrior Dog Foundation and where that started.
Yeah. So kind of similarly, a lot of the stuff, whether it's the dog food, treat supplements, the online training, even the books, like they weren't things that I thought of and be like, I want to do this. They were honestly like as important as it is to be proactive, like in every case, which is kind of funny now that I think about it. Like pretty much everything I do is reactionary. Like all
right there with you, brother.
I mean, all of the main revenue streams that I have that are successful are because of something.
Yeah.
And not because like I thought this is what I'm going to do and I'm going to develop a plan. It was like there was enough demand for it. I was like, well, fuck it. I guess I'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same thing with the Warrior Dog Foundation. I mean, we took our first 2 dogs back in August of 2010, right? So we're coming up on 13 years.
Holy cow.
And we've taken in over 300 dogs. And in every case, this dog has kind of funneled himself into whether it's handling, training, mishaps, genetics, combination of all of them, to where this dog has been deemed like the Hannibal Lecter of the unit. And basically the unit's like, he's a liability to and even she, and there are some females that we get in, but is that this dog has become such a liability that we would be better off euthanizing them than keeping them. And this is a dog, they've got tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars of training into and years of experience and, handlers and what have you. But the dog has bit several people it wasn't supposed to, has, done a lot of things that basically they can't work through. And so that's when we take them. So I would say a fairly common misconception is that we get all these dogs in that are just, they're at the end of their service and the handler can't keep them or whatever. While that's the case occasionally, most times it's the former. It's where the dog is made enough mistakes or done enough things that have gotten it into this kind of sticky situation of they just can't keep him around because he's done too many of the wrong things. So from my perspective and our perspective, that's kind of how it started, is that there were 2 special operations dogs. Both of them had deployed multiple times. Both of them had been wounded in combat, had redeployed afterwards, saved, dozens, if not hundreds of special operators' lives. And, but both of them were ornery, handful, full of piss and vinegar, not easy to deal with dogs. And kind of like my comment, to be fair, because a lot of people hear that and they're like, what the fuck? Like those dogs did all this and the units turned their back on them. And that's not the case. I mean, it's a tough spot for them to be in too, because just like with the police department, it's like they have their ongoing mission that has to be the priority.
Yeah.
Right. So if they're taking resources away from their current dogs and shooters and giving them to retired dogs, well, now you're putting dogs and shooters, in harm's way. I mean, I hate to say unnecessarily, but it really is. Like it's an unfortunate order of priority and magnitude that they have to make this shitty decision. And so how it started was that, that there was these 2 dogs and they were looking for a place to send them basically. And they reached out to me and a handful of other guys kind of in similar positions, that had kennels of dogs and were working and training with military and police. And everybody was like, no, dude, what do you want me to do with these dogs? They're like these 10-year-old dogs that have bit 100 fucking people, like, and they're broken and angry. And like, what am I going to do with them?
Yeah.
It's kind of similar. It's like, I got a business to run and a family to feed. And so a few weeks went by and then again, like, you sure you can't take them? And I was like, okay, well, if you're asking me again, every other guy that you've asked has said no. It's like, so what? If I don't take them, if none of us take them, like, what are you guys going to do with these dogs? And they're like, well, unfortunately, we're probably going to have to put them down because we just don't have the resources to take care of them because it's taking away from our current operational capacity. And for me, like, just that second, I was like, fuck that, send them here. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And so I did. And that was the catalyst, and then that led to other operational units and then police departments and then Lackland. I mean, at this point, we've taken dogs from, I would say, just about every, working entity out there.
Wow.
Federal, state, local, you name it.
Wow.
Not local. I mean, obviously, there's a ton of local police departments we haven't taken dogs from, but a lot. Just about every federal capacity, DOD. Every branch of service. You name it. And so. But it's a labor of love, and it's a dangerous one. It's expensive. It's not. These aren't the dogs that it's like, oh, just you can't hire the $10 an hour employee to clean up after them.
It's like putting the trainer in with the lions. You know?
No, I mean it's not like there's a little, I can't remember the name of it, little doggy daycare thing right down the street.
Oh right,
When I drove in,
that's true.
These aren't those dogs.
Yeah.
The facility has to be far more robust. Like everything has to be overbuilt, like it's a fucking prison, because they'll break everything. They're like team guys. It's like if you want to see if something is durable, fucking give it to these dogs. Like, is it you want to see if this door will stand up? Fucking put it in.
I love that.
In Sparky's fucking kennel run, because he'll test the tensile strength.
I love that.
So the facility has to be super robust, and you have to hire experts. And it's a 24/7 gig. It's not like, oh, it's Christmas, we're taking the week off. No, it's 24/7. Like there's multiple people who are very, very skilled behaviorists and handlers that are on staff, on site 24/7.
Love it.
So it's a heavy lift.
Yeah, it is.
We have 30 kennel spaces that are always full. We always have usually, a handful of dogs on a waiting list, and we're always kind of trying to triage, and figure out how to balance that a little bit, which is tricky, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. I mean, one of the most rewarding things that I can do is to, walk around that kennel facility and look at 30 dogs, looking them right in their eyeballs and know, like, this dog would be in a box of ashes on somebody's desk if we hadn't taken him. And there they are, still full of piss and vinegar, trying to bite me or fling shit on me as I walk by or what, but like if you think about everything that they've done, it's like they deserve at least, the dignity and grace to live out their life, running around, chasing a ball and having fun and at least, not putting them to sleep. So,
man, I remember when that thing first kicked off too. And I can only imagine how difficult it is. And you now, much like the units, you've worked yourself into a position where you do have to do the triage, where you do have to keep, you have to prioritize what you can do and what you can manage. And I know that 30 seems like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm sure it's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah. I mean, there's in the upwards of 50,000 working dogs in the United States. That's all encompassing military, police.
Yeah, for sure.
Federal, you name it. But I mean, that's not a small number. Now, luckily, most of those dogs, when they retire, go with their handlers or what have you.
Oops.
But for the ones that can't, there's organizations such as ours that accommodate them. But
well, it was something that was near and dear to my heart too. We've given to the foundation several times, just because it is something that's important to me. I've seen the value that they bring to us, not just in a pet scenario, but in the operational world, and how, like you said, hundreds, if not thousands of people that have been saved because they were there and they did what they were supposed to do. So I'm thrilled and excited to see that, that they're getting that the care that they deserve for the years that they put in, the time that they put in service for all of that. And it's great to see that they can live out their lives, like you said, with dignity, but also in an environment that's, got that kind of happy vibe, that loving vibe that can give them that kind of like little bit, gonna sprinkle a little bit on you just because, all that piss and vinegar needs a little balance.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing for us and what's interesting, I think a lot of the training lessons that I've kind of brought into the online stuff and through conferences or seminars or what have you, a lot of them come from dealing with those dogs.
Really?
Yeah, because, taking a balanced, high drive working dog that's cognitive, that, is operant, that, is intelligent, but balanced and, social enough and clear headed. I'm not going to say that training is easy, but by comparison, it's fucking easy.
Yeah.
So we get the dogs that, like, dude, professional handlers and trainers couldn't unwind these dogs and couldn't fix whatever problems they were having, to the point where they were going to fucking kill them.
Yeah, put them down. Yeah.
So like that's what we're starting with.
Wow.
You know, so a lot of the like
That's intense.
hard lessons learned, it's not like, because a fairly common, I would say, methodology, it's getting less and less as time goes on, I think, because of, you know, a lot of the training that comes out of stuff like what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
you know, it's kind of a more, you know, police and military tends to be a little more old school and kind of yank and crank, like, well, I'll fucking tell this dog what time it is, you know. Uh, it's, again, it's becoming less and less, but, you know, these are dogs that have in some cases been handled that way. And kind of the shitty irony, is that, you know, we're looking for dogs that won't put up with that. Right. It's like, I want a dog that if I'm sending him into a building like this at 2 a.m. with a twice convicted felon hopped up on bath salt,
Nice.
like, you better have a nasty fucking animal to deal with somebody like that.
Yeah.
A dog that's not going to take shit, that's not going to be intimidated, that's
Yeah.
not going to be told what to do, that's not going to fold under pressure,
Yeah.
that can have its legs broken or its teeth knocked out and still come after its eye gouge, its ears ripped off. I mean, like, when you're sending them in on these bad guys, like, these are some nasty dudes with everything to lose that know if this dog gets the better of them, they're going to jail for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Like, so they're going to fucking stab them, shoot them, beat them, you know, body slam. I mean, they're going to do nasty shit to this dog. And so you've got to be able to have a dog that physically and mentally can put up with that kind of stress and pressure.
Yeah.
So, like, okay, so you have that as your foundation. Like, that's your genetic blank slate.
Yeah.
So that dog isn't going to put up with shit.
Yeah.
Right? It's not going to take you handling him hard or, you know, giving him shit or being unfair with him or, you know, correcting him unnecessarily or having unrealistic expectations or rushing him or not having a good relationship and expecting respect. And unfortunately, sometimes that happens. And so, you know, you've got these butting of the heads. And so now you get a dog that's kind of used to being handled that way and you've got to unwind that. You know, and so that's, where a lot of the initial, like, when we first get the dog in, you got a dog that, like, won't let you put a collar or won't put a leash or a collar on him, won't let you put him back in a crate or in a kennel run, won't let you take a ball from it, you know, won't give you a ball, you know, will guard his food bowl when it's empty. I mean, and will absolutely fuck you up over it. I mean, I'm not talking will growl and nip at you. I'm talking will fillet you wide the fuck open. You know, and so it's like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like to take the mentality of like, well, you know, I'll use a prong collar and I'll make this dog, like, it's like putting a prong collar on fucking Shamu and telling him to jump. It's like, it's not going to work. You know, you're going to wind up in his guts. And so you have to take that mentality of like, I'm training a dangerous zoo animal. And like, I've got to outsmart them and condition them to do what I want.
Wow.
No different. You know, you see some of the same methodologies in zoos actually, where like, teaching tigers to offer their tail to draw blood from it, you know, by using markers and food.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so, you know, the exact same process from A to B is used. But yeah, I mean, so instead of hitting them with a tranq gun and having to go doing it that way, like, you know, teaching big, dangerous, predatory animals to offer things to get blood drawn or medications administered or whatever, the exact same procedures are used. And so
I love that.
Some of that same kind of bonding and relationship building under very tense, difficult circumstances, some of those basic principles are derived from dealing with these dogs for over the last decade plus.
Wow. I think that, you know, and that's brilliant that you could actually, you know, first of all, it's incredibly interesting to be able to take a step back and say, hey, what can we learn from these guys?
Yeah.
You know, like, okay, you know, these guys represent, not necessarily the worst case, but they definitely don't represent the easy road. And so the unraveling of that probably was hugely like underrated as far as the value that you can now bring to the table, like compared to other people that have always been working with the cream of the crop of sorts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, to take a dog that, it's kind of like the Jordan Peterson, you know, a kind man is not, or like, you know, I can't remember what that's saying.
Yeah. I know what it.
You know, a kind man isn't a good man, you know, kind of thing or whatever.
Yeah,
it's
it's very close.
You need to be dangerous, basically. But it's kind of that same thing. It's like if you take a dog that's so domesticated to where he's got no spine, no sack, and is never going to challenge you in any way whatsoever, like any guy that's 4, 5, 6 times his size can make that dog do what he wants.
Yeah.
There's no finesse or no mastery there whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like if you can take a dog that that is physically capable of defeating you,
Yeah.
and train him to do whatever you tell him, and then taking it a step further and actually not just allowing him to be aggressive, but conditioning it and controlling it and directing it.
Yeah.
Like that takes mastery to be able to do that. And I'm not saying I'm a master at it. I certainly make mistakes and continue to learn, but to me, like, that's far more impressive than just being a dick and bullying a dog around and into submission and making him do what you say.
God.
There's a time and a place for corrections, and there has to be. The pure positive, like only using reinforcement. Like, I use reinforcement 90% of the time. And, my rule of thumb is, if I'm trying to teach the dog a behavior, like, I want it to be a positive learning environment where the dog is comfortable, confident, happy, having fun, and being positively reinforced.
Yeah.
Same way with kids. Like, you want to teach your kid algebra, like, hey, what's this problem? And they don't know, and you slap them for not knowing it. Like, that's not a good way to learn.
Yeah.
They're not going to learn anything.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to resent you, and they're going to survive and do the bare minimum to not get punished.
Oh, so
On
true.
the same token, like, if you have a standard of, hey, your room needs to be clean, you say, hey, your room, needs to be tightened up. Hey, Dad, how about you go fuck yourself? Like, that can't be let go either. Like, you can't say, okay, well, you're not getting M&Ms after dinner tonight. Like, no, there has to be a consequence.
Absolutely.
And all dogs are different. Some dogs need a higher level of form of correction for certain consequences than others. Some, a light tug on a flat collar is plenty.
Yeah.
Some, a stern verbal no is enough. Some dogs, need to have a bit of a come to Jesus to even get their attention, let alone give them a correction or a consequence for something. That's where, a trainer has to understand what he's dealing with. And then you're applying all of the same techniques, but the dog is dictating the magnitude. An analogy I like to use when it comes to genetics in both training and capability is the dog's, and this is with people too, is the dog's genetics is like an amplifier for a stereo, right? Let's say you have a 100-watt amp.
Okay.
Right. And you've got the sliders on, for treble, bass, master, volume, gain, whatever. Is that, your genetics is the 100 watts, like whether it's 20 watts, 10 watts, 5, 50, 100, 200, 1,000, that's what you have to work with. And there's no changing that.
Okay.
Those sliders are environment and training, right? So you can only maximize 5 watts if that's all you have to work with. Like, you can turn the volume all the way up and maximize every single fucking slider. You still only have 5 watts to work with.
Right.
Right. On the same token, if you have 100 watts, like, you still, that's a lot of fucking power.
Yeah.
And even if you turn everything down, like, you still have 100 fucking watts there that's hard to handle.
Yeah.
And so keeping that in mind is that a good trainer or even an adequate trainer, like, first you got to know what the wattage is that you're dealing with. And then you're going to determine, okay, this is what I need for reinforcement. Some dogs, their food drive is not as high as their toy drive and vice versa. So understanding what the dog is driven for, what they like, what they don't like, what it's going to take to correct a dog or give them a consequence.
Yeah.
Some dogs, it's going to be way more than others. And that's where the nuance of training comes in. The principles are all the exact same.
Yeah.
But the sliders are kind of the personality that you're
adding. And I'm having these flashbacks as we're sitting here talking. You had mentioned, returning pet owners, they had a pet, and then for whatever reason, they now have a new pet, and they want the new pet to behave at the same level that the other pet was behaving, without realizing that other pet had 10 years of involvement.
Yeah. And was a different dog.
Completely. So when, my last dog was a shepherd, and he was a handful for sure. And the corrections were a little bit more required, and just different way of handling him. And the new dog, she's like wickedly different. And it took me, I was like, this is a little different, it took a moment, and luckily, I had Jamie there to kind of assist in all of that, but it took a moment to recognize, okay, she behaves differently. Number one, she is different. Number two, but like I was so used to doing things a certain way with the other dog, Argus, that when Brizo came in, I had to like really take a step back and think my way through, okay, what am I trying to accomplish here? What is she doing? What do I want her to do? How do I get her there? Kind of thing. And that took, so even though she was very, very different, and even though, like you're saying, it's like, they're the same, yet they're different. I found that to be incredibly rewarding to see that, like, okay, I just have to really think my way through this process. And, like it takes maybe a year or two. And then all of a sudden you're back to the previous kind of experience that you had with the other dog and getting along and doing all that other stuff. It was like, it took some time for me for sure. And I'm so grateful that, that they are so diametrically opposed. They really are very, very different. I'm grateful for that, because otherwise I would have had, I wouldn't have had the same experience that I have with her now. It's a unique, these animals come into our lives for such a short time period. You want to maximize the time as much as you can, and getting to that point where you can live in a more comfortable setting where everybody kind of knows their place, knows the boundaries, and you can kind of have the fun that you expect to have with the dogs. That's the key.
Yep.
Let me ask you some of these questions, and I usually start with these questions, but I want to kind of finish with these. What has been kind of like the biggest challenge in your life, whether it be the Navy, whether it be your entrepreneurial, whether it be, dipping the toes in the charity work? What's been the biggest challenge?
Being a dad, hands down. I mean, it's like with most things, I think, the harder it is, the more rewarding it is.
So true.
But yeah, it's been the biggest challenge for me easily.
Yeah.
It's just, I've got 2 kids and kind of similarly, like, talking about the differences, not to compare kids to dogs, but there are plenty of parallels, is that they're 2 very different kids.
Oh, man.
And it's just growing up, I know how my childhood was and how my parents were, and they, it's interesting. The amount of respect that I had for my parents was high before I was a father. Now I can't even measure it. Like, my hats off to them, and my level of respect for the job that they did knows no bounds, because when I see the mistakes that I've made as a dad, and the struggles that I've had going through the process of kids growing up and getting into teen years and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Man, it's just, it's beyond a full-time job. I mean, it's, it puts everything else in the fucking backseat,
Well, I'll tell you, I love this. I tell this story a lot. My dad was visiting, and we were in the living room watching TV, the family, and the boys did something. I don't know what it was. They did something, and I got all irate. It was, very, really irate. And I remember, like, I had to get up and go into the kitchen. I figured, remove myself from this problem, come back and solve it with a clear head. So I went into the kitchen, and as I walk back out, my dad is just sitting there, kind of in this big lazy boy recliner. He's sitting there. We might have even been watching football, and he's just kind of sitting there and he's giggling, and he's just laughing. And I was like, Dad, what are you laughing at? He just kind of smirked, and he's like, payback. And I was like, at that moment, I had a completely different perspective on fatherhood and how, and I was just like I came out there, I was still kind of like in that zone a little bit. And as soon as he said that, I was like, oh my God, I get it. It made sense all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And the lessons that I'm sure they're very similar, a lot of parallels, like I'll call my dad up and I'll be like, hey, did I do this when, cause I have selective memory apparently, but my parents don't. Yeah.
My kids are always grilling my parents about what I fucked up growing up, like all the time. Every time they see him, like, what did he do? What did he get in trouble for? What did he fuck up?
Yeah.
It's like they want some blue chips or something.
Oh yeah. They're waiting to pull those out later down the road.
There was a really neat piece of advice. I would say, like, you got to take it with a grain of salt, that I heard, fairly recently, actually, but in reference to how to deal with scenarios that frustrate you as a parent. And it's that, imagine you have a time machine and you're now 80 years old.
Yeah.
And you have the ability to go back, like, as an 80-year-old, you only get one use of this time machine, and it's to go back. And the only time you get to interact back when you were a father with your kids is at this moment.
Yeah.
And that's how you should deal with it. Keep in mind, like, I think that there's a happy medium there, is that, like, if you legitimately did that, you would let every fucking thing slide, and,
True.
and your kids would be little terrorist assholes, because you'd be so thankful that you got to see them as children again, that you wouldn't give a fuck what they did, and they'd be entitled little assholes. But But the principle of that, I think, is important, is to realize kind of the gravity of the moment and not let yourself get so wrapped up in being pissed off and emotional at what's happening that you lose the bigger picture. And the second piece of advice, I've shared this before a few times, which I think is the most rock solid piece that I've tried to adopt over the last few years, is when it comes to just interacting with your kids, period, is that you want to be the thermostat in the room and not the thermometer, right? You want to set the temperature, don't reflect it, and to me, like, if there is no more like profound and simple piece of advice than that.
Wow. Say that again.
Yeah. I mean, so be the thermostat in the room, not the thermometer.
Yeah.
Set the temperature, don't reflect it.
That is fucking awesome.
Which is really tough to do sometimes.
Oh, 100%.
But if you always think of it that way, like, hey, I have to be, like, I'm the adult, I'm the parent, I have to set the temperature. Like, I can't let my mercury blow up into 120 degrees.
Man, that is huge. I mean, obviously over the years you hear all sorts of little pieces, nuggets of knowledge, little bits of wisdom, but that is very profound. And I like the time machine one too.
Yeah.
I've heard that one before, and that, like, one of my sons now lives out of state with his mom, and so I don't get a chance to see him that much. And so when we do, and things kind of don't go that way, I remind myself that I have only a very limited time to spend with him.
Yeah.
Is it really that?
Yeah.
Is it really that important? Is it really that? Is it going to make a big difference? And that's one of the things that I, the the milk that got spilt at the kitchen table, or the fact that maybe something got broken or whatever. Those all are upsetting without a doubt. But in the grand scheme of things,
doesn't matter.
Mean shit.
Yeah.
Really doesn't matter. And that's the hard part, is to be able, like that. That's why I love that thermostat versus thermometer scenario, because it allows you to actually cognitively see that.
Yeah.
And see, I'm sure that kid feels bad they broke something or spilt something. I don't have to make it worse.
Yeah.
And instead, I need to kind of usher in a new environment that helps them to kind of get past that.
Yeah.
That's huge, man. I love that. Jeez, I can mull that over for a long, long time, but I want to ask you some more questions.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. How do you deal with failure?
To me, it's just a good learning experience.
Nice.
I mean, to me, the only people who truly fail are the people that quit. I mean, I don't even really view failure as failure. I mean, I'm not trying to use the cliche like, oh, you either fucking win or you learn. Like, but I mean, that really is the case. Like, to me, if I fail at something, or if I try something and it doesn't succeed, well, okay, well, I know that didn't work like that, and I either need to pivot or do something totally different or whatever. But anybody who's ever done anything great, or even just done something productive with their life, has taken chances. You know, and like, you're not going to get anywhere near where you want to be. You're never going to be successful if you don't take any fucking chances. So, like, I don't sweat it. I mean, I don't mind failing.
Yeah. I think that's hugely valuable. And I think one of the things that people have a hard time appreciating is, risk aversion is good in proportions. Being able to recognize a risk and take the appropriate actions. That's great. But when that risk aversion prevents you from doing anything, well, then it's bad. And I kind of came to this on my own, but then I found later in life that it had a name, which was minimum viable product, an MVP, meaning I don't have to have the perfect website to launch my new widget. I just need to have a minimum viable product to get it out there to start something with.
Yeah.
And then I'll correct as we go, because I value the feedback that I'm getting. I value, okay, you know what? That didn't work. Let's change that. Let's move this. But we needed something out there so that we can start to get some feedback, so we can start to figure out what we need to check or correct or altogether eliminate.
Yeah. And I think one thing to add to that is that defining what failure is also key.
Interesting. How do you define it?
I mean, to me, like, if I didn't reach my intended goal and it didn't come to fruition, then okay, then I failed at that concept. Where I think a lot of people really shoot themselves in the foot is viewing failure as negative comments on social media or not being liked or,
God,
what, like fucking don't read the comments, like
100%.
But I have a hard and fast rule with that too, that has never steered me wrong, which is very simply like in any comment section is that if it's somebody that I would ask for advice, then I'm interested in what they have to say.
Yeah.
If it's not, then I'm not. But that goes both ways, right?
Yeah.
That's good or it's bad and good. Because if you let somebody who you have no idea who they are, like you'd never ask them for advice, don't let them inflate your fucking ego either.
100%.
Because people will, they'll get too big for their britches because they have all these basement dwelling fucking trolls that blow them online nonstop for shit that isn't even important. And they think that they're way fucking cooler than they are.
Than they really are. Oh my God. That is so true. But that's another great way to look at it too, because in so many cases, you can easily find yourself going down that rabbit hole. You go into the comment section and it just can get you can get sideways fast.
Yeah. And I think another way to look at that is that like, if it's legitimately a problem where you fucked up and it's not somebody just busting your balls, right? Like where you've made a mistake, whoever has the problem with you will call you. Right?
That's a good point.
So guess what? If they don't have your number,
then
it
it's not
doesn't
important.
fucking matter what they think, So
it's so true too, because there have been a couple of times where I've gotten a text message or a phone call or a DM from somebody that I actually do know, and they'd bring it to my attention. I'd be like, oh, well, fuck.
Yeah. To me, like if you don't have my phone number, I'm probably not going to give a fuck what you think.
That's a good metric. I like that. If you don't have my phone number, I don't give a fuck.
And I may just change it
periodically, just to rue the game. Yeah. All right. Mentors. What was like the best advice that you got from a mentor?
It's tough to pinpoint like a single piece of best advice, because I've been so fortunate in my life to be at different points in my life surrounded by such great men, honestly. Yeah. Especially like from 18 to 30 being in the SEAL teams and my parents did a phenomenal job laying the foundation, I think. But then to kind of finish growing up surrounded by grown fucking men who had been there and done that, and some of whom had been to war, kind of. Some of them had. There's Vietnam vets and different incursions. Either way, there were guys that that were kind of at the pinnacle of what I would consider to be a real man. That not only was I able to be around, but, lived with, trained with, traveled with, traveled the world
totally
with,
different,
fucking
man.
went to war with.
Yeah.
Really learned how to take responsibility and accountability and how to, really be a fucking man in every essence of the word. And so, there are so many guys. Everybody in the SEAL teams, from BUDS instructors to platoon chiefs and LPOs and seasoned guys and guys in training cell at the command. And you name it. Like there were hundreds of them.
Yeah.
That I'll be forever grateful. And when you think about it from kind of the grand scheme of society, like I wish that every fucking 18-year-old boy could go be in that environment. Our country would be so far better off. You couldn't pay to have that kind of tutelage,
It's so true.
But then, it started with my parents, like, there's countless times where they gave me tons of great advice. SEAL team, same thing. Even getting out, in dog training, there's dozens of guys that taught me everything that I know. Some of it, I learned the hard way on my own, but like there are a number of guys that were fucking instrumental in bringing me up as a dog trainer, but then even as a businessman, same thing. One thing that again, like an unintended positive consequence of selling personal protection dogs is that, over the last, better part of 15 years that I've been doing it, the Rolodex of individuals that I've sold dogs to, some of them are household names. In the business world. And these are guys who are fucking brilliant businessmen. They're brilliant human beings. They're brilliant businessmen. They're phenomenal people. And selling a personal protection dog is a very strange transaction.
Interesting. Why is that?
There's really nothing else like it. So you're adding a family member to these people's lives.
Yeah.
Right. So they're trusting you with plus oneing their family.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, take home renovations. Like I'm in their house. Right. Well, so are somebody who's redoing their bathroom, but not while they're living in it.
Yeah.
Right. So like you're seeing these people first thing in the morning, like you're staying in their house.
Wow.
Hanging out with them, watching them put their children to bed, watching their morning routines first thing in the morning, like coaching them and telling them that they're fucking something up, which nobody does, but you have to.
Yeah.
You know, and so you have this very, very intimate personal relationship with these people that, again, like I can't think of anything else shy of like adopting a kid. But even then, it's like my relationship continues with them for the next decade.
Yeah.
You know, anytime they have a question, a problem, a concern, a vet issue, I mean, whatever, it's, hey, dude, fucking this happened. What do I do? Or, you know, whatever.
Wow.
You know, so in that, I mean, there's an inherent serious high level of trust that has to be there for them to say, yeah, you know what? I'm going to let you bring a dog in that's bred, raised, and trained to fucking hurt people.
Yeah.
And I'm going to let you come into my house, stay in my house overnight with me and interact with my kids and teach our entire family how to handle this dog. Like there's nothing else like it.
That is pretty far out.
So with that, it's like, not that I use that as a springboard, but inherently it's like they'll say, tell me about your business or tell me about what you do, you know. And so over the last 15 years of just getting advice or bouncing ideas off of, or, hey, have you thought about this? Like it's generally casual.
Yeah.
In some cases it's very formal and structured and professional, but it's just, you know, getting to kind of interact with brilliant fucking minds over the last over decade in lots of different industries and all different types of operational environments.
Oh, that's priceless.
Yeah. I mean, like, so again, it's like I've spent my entire life being spoiled fucking rotten by people that I don't deserve, frankly. You know, I mean, like from my parents to the SEAL teams to dog training to fucking business mentors, like there's too many people to count.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been the luckiest fucking asshole I know, you know, I mean, I really have. Like, I don't deserve it. But.
I can sympathize in some cases because, you know, I feel the same way. You know, my parents did a fantastic job. The SEAL team, the Navy and the SEAL teams finished that forging process. I've had the luxury of knowing giants in the industry and being able to, you know, either work with them or be able to ask them, hey, I'm fucking this up. What am I doing wrong? And, you know, they'll be able to give me that type of feedback. I mean, it's truly, but the other thing too, is that I think what makes it so valuable, that kind of a relationship, is the willingness to actually be open to that type of feedback, open to that type. I mean, yes, they're household names, you know that, but there's still that other part of the equation, which is you still have to take that information on board, even though you know it's valuable, and you still need to be able to make it actionable.
Yeah. And you've got to let your ego stay out of the way, you know, put it in your back pocket and realize, like, I mean, that's one thing that no matter how old I get, no matter where I'm at in my life, like, and this is another piece of advice I give people all the time is always be learning something, like at least one thing where you don't have a fucking clue what you're doing and you're being taught by somebody else. Like, it's crucial.
Yes. I love that. You know, and it's funny. I joke about this, but every 10 years I take on a whole new skill, something that I haven't ever had any experience with, or a surface scan of something. And I try to take that new skill on and I try to use it for 10-ish years. Yeah. And it's funny because I got it from a Led Zeppelin song, the Ramble On. Every 10 years, time to ramble on. So that's kind of like that became kind of like my thing. I started, like, every 10 years I'd find something to invest my time and energy and want to learn about. And, you know, sometimes it was, you know, some of the stuff was okay. Some of the stuff was, you know, like, I'm like, okay. But my point is that I purposely put myself in situations that I didn't know shit. Yeah. Because what I wanted was I wanted to get good at learning. Yeah. I didn't care what I was learning.
Well, I think it's important for brain health too. Like to be doing something that you're fucking terrible at and doing it anyway. Like, yeah, I mean, like, and just fucking learning. Like, you need to always be learning.
Oh, it's so true. And the value behind, like, we get comfortable in our own little bubbles of sorts, our vacuum, if you will. And what that ends up doing is that ends up kind of shucking more experience, more opportunity, more value from other areas. Like I have learned, like the way that I communicate certain methodologies, certain techniques, is to try to connect with the individual at a level that they have a high level of knowledge on. And it could be something in the fitness world. Like I use a lot of barbell lifts. Driving is another thing. I do a lot of things. I'll make analogies based off driving because that's something that everybody can relate to. There are other things that I just try to understand what that other person knows a little bit or a lot about and connect with them through there. And that means that I've had to kind of learn all this other stuff that I may not have wanted to learn. I mean, luckily, the driving was an easy one because most of us got, exposed to, high performance driving while we were still in the Navy. And I still find it to be extremely fun to do that. So being able to relate that to something that everybody does on a daily basis makes it easy for people to kind of see what I'm trying to tell them. And that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that I had to learn. The best advice that I can give any new instructor is to put yourself in that student's shoes.
Same with dog training.
100%. Yeah. Put yourself in their shoes, because you're going to best be able to relate to them, and they're going to recognize that, and the value and the bond that you've created is going to be so much better.
Yeah,
so much better.
Yep.
All right, so let's start wrapping things up. I got one final question for you.
False.
False is it? All
37.
Right. 38.
All right.
38.
That's right. 38.
So, what do you want to be the biggest takeaway for our listeners?
The biggest thing is, I think, from a practical knowledge standpoint, is two things. One, we just talked about: always continue to learn, challenge yourself in one way.
Love it.
Secondly, from a dog standpoint, is just put yourself in the dog's shoes and always think of whatever the scenario is from their perspective, because you know what you're trying to accomplish, and this is the biggest. I would say difference between training people and training dogs is, like, I can explain to you what our objectives are.
Yeah.
The dog has no fucking clue. I mean, zero. Like, even societally, like, we teach kids what's acceptable behavior or not. As a society, we do. Like, our desired or expectations as it relates to basic dog etiquette, the dog doesn't come hardwired with those things, and they have no fucking idea. Like, them jumping up and grabbing a sandwich out of your hands is not rude to them, or shitting where they sleep, for that matter, or like shitting inside the house. Like, they have no concept that that's fucking terrible.
Yeah.
So understanding that, going into your training sessions, knowing that they have no idea what their expectations are, which means you need to lower yours of them.
Nice.
And then be consistent and work your way through those A plus B equals C formulas until that desired behavior becomes an expectation.
I love that. The A plus B equals C analogy is so simple to really appreciate from the dog's perspective.
Yeah.
Thinking about it from that point of view as a dog. All right. So where can people learn more about you, learn more about all the projects, the various companies?
Tinder is the best place.
Oh, right on. Well, I'll give you a
since
bump
you're the
up.
CEO,
I'll give you a bump up.
Yeah. So just going, MikeRitland.com is really the best kind of hub to find everything. That's the food, the treats, the supplements, the online training, all of the products.
I meant to ask you about the food. Like that seems like that's something that about like the last 3 to 5 years that I think you kicked off.
Yeah.
What got you into that?
Similarly, there's been, I've over the last 20 years of feeding dogs, 20 plus, I've gone through a host of different brands that, it's all the same story, right? It starts out as a really small company, a kind of a boutique, really high quality, quality control is through the roof, and they really give a shit. It's a little mom and pop joint. I mean, fucking Canada, Timberwolf Organics, Nature's Variety, Origin, Akana, Victor. I mean, there's all these different brands that when the first couple of years that they were in existence, they were awesome.
Yeah.
Switch all the dogs to the food. They're doing fantastic. They build up this huge customer base in 2-3 years. Diamond, Purina, Mars, Eukanuba, whoever comes in and buys them out, sole sort, takes their packaging and their customer base, but now makes it in their plant with subpar ingredients. And you notice it, within a month or two of the shift. Yeah. I mean, their coats go to shit. They're shitting twice as much, and it's soft. And yeah, you can just tell, if you're paying any attention. And I just got tired of doing that over and over and over. is every time I found a great brand is that, fucking 2 years later they suck. And so it's like, well, fuck it. I'll do it myself.
I'll do it myself.
Yeah. So I found a manufacturer and spent, a couple of years really dialing in the formula of saying, this is exactly how I want it to be, and got it to where, okay, now that, all the dogs are doing really well, I feed all my own dogs. All of the 30 retired dogs are fed that food. So we've had, not that they're guinea pigs, but it's good real-time feedback. Unlike with human beings, like with a dog, if it's a hip and joint supplement, like there's no fucking placebo with a dog. Same with the nutrition. Like if it's good, you're going to know.
Wow.
If it sucks, you're going to know. So it's very good, real-time feedback of dogs that, are older, that have, hip problems, that have cognition issues, that have behavioral issues.
Yeah.
And so we've been able to really dial in the formula, and I couldn't be happier or more prouder with it. That's really kind of the big focus moving into the next few years. And really the long game for me is the food, treats, and supplements.
Oh, I think it's a brilliant idea. That's never going to go away.
Yeah.
That really isn't. And, the nice thing about it is that you don't have to be out there in the kennels doing that, for the rest of your life. So that's smart. That's smart. All right, folks. Well, that's a wrap. Mike, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. This was awesome to be on this side of the podcast versus the other side. I want to thank the audience for tuning in. I want to thank all our sponsors. I want to thank the men and women that are holding the line. You can check out all our previous podcasts by visiting the bulletproofworkshop.com. Learn more about me and training opportunities by visiting tridentconcepts.com. Until then, I'm Jeff Gonzalez. You've been listening to the Bulletproof Workshop podcast. Stay safe or be dangerous.